Hi, first grade. I hope you are doing well today. So I am really excited. Big day. We are moving on to Module 2, which is called Creature Features. And we're going to get to read a lot of different books about some really interesting animals. And a lot of the books that we will read will be nonfiction. In other words, they will be giving us true facts and information. So compared to Module 1, most of the stories that we read in Module 1, or most of the books that we read, were stories that had a character, a setting, a problem, a resolution, where in this module, we're going to get to read a lot of nonfiction or informational text. So I think you'll find it pretty interesting. But today we're going to start with two short stories that are called Fables. So these are Aesop's Fables. Now let's look at our pizza questions, right? So we have a brand new big full pizza question, which is what can we discover about animals' unique features? So to discover means to kind of learn new things about. So what are we're going to be trying to answer the question, what are new things we can learn about animals' unique features? And our just slice of pizza question that we'll be working on for the next several lessons will be, what lessons can we learn through stories about animals? And a lesson, just like we talked about when we read Green Eggs and Ham, the lesson that the author was trying to teach us was to not judge something before you've tried it, and to not say that you don't like something before you've even tried it. So we're going to read some short stories today, and you can kind of start thinking about what are the lessons that the author is trying to teach us. And we'll talk more about that later. Today, our just one bite of pizza question is, like we usually do when we first read a new text, what do I notice and wonder about Aesop's Fables? What do I notice and wonder? So we're going to read two short fables today. And then you will be able to share. We'll use Padlet this time. Share something that you either noticed and or wondered about either of the stories. So let's take a look. So these two short stories, there was a copy that was put in the third supply box pickup, but these are also in your Module 2 blue Wit and Wisdom workbook. It has the picture of the hare on the front, like the rabbit, the hare. So if you wanted to, follow along on the paper copies or in the workbook, you can also just look at the screen, but we will be using those paper copies, throughout some of these lessons. But I just wanted to let you know that there's actually two places that you could find your own copy to read these stories. Okay, so I keep saying this word fables, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what a fable means. But a fable is a story that is meant to teach a lesson. So it usually talks about, animals and some adventure of animals, some adventure that they go through or that happens. And the point of the story, of the fable, is to teach us a lesson from what happens to the animals. So let's read the first one, The Ants and the Grasshopper. And again, we just want you to be thinking about, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And kind of just keep that in the back of your mind about what lesson do you think they're trying to teach us? Okay? All right, so The Ants and the Grasshopper. One bright day in the late autumn, a family of ants were bustling about in the warm sunshine, drying out the grain they had stored up during the summer, when a starving grasshopper, his fiddle under his arm, came up and humbly begged for a bite to eat. "What?" cried the ants in surprise. "Haven't you stored anything away for the winter? What in the world have you been doing all last summer?" "I didn't have time to store up any food," whined the grasshopper. "I was so busy making music that before I knew it, summer was gone." The ants shrugged their shoulders in disgust. "Making music, were you?" they cried. "Very well, now dance." And they turned their backs on the grasshopper and went on with their work. All right, so that was The Ants and the Grasshopper. So again, what's something that you notice about the story? And what is something that you wonder? So think about those asking questions: who, what, where, when, why, maybe what some of the words mean. And I can't wait to hear what you wonder about that story. Now, we're going to read 2 stories today because these were shorter, and we'll kind of combine the 2 stories. But so you can kind of think about the ant and the grasshopper, and then we're also going to read the hare and the tortoise. And when you share on the Padlet, feel free to share something, a question that you had about either of the stories or both of the stories if you would like to. And like I said, you have the paper copy of them was in your 3rd supply box, and these are also in your Module 2 workbook. All right, so this is the hare and the tortoise. A hare was making fun of the tortoise one day for being so slow. "Do you ever get anywhere?" he asked with a mocking laugh. "Yes," replied the tortoise, "and I get there sooner than you think. I'll run you a race and prove it." The hare was much amused at the idea of running a race with the tortoise, but for the fun of the thing, he agreed. So the fox, who had consented to act as judge, marked the distance and started the runners off. The hare was very soon far out of sight, and to make the tortoise feel very deeply how ridiculous it was for him to try a race with a hare, he lay down beside the course to take a nap until the tortoise could catch up. The tortoise, meanwhile, kept going slowly but steadily, and after a time passed the place where the hare was sleeping. But the hare slept on very peacefully, and when at last he did not wake up, the tortoise was near the goal. The hare now ran his swiftest, but he could not overtake the tortoise in time. All right, so again, anything that you noticed about this short story, or any questions that you have about this short story? As we always wonder and notice when we first read a text. I know there might be some words in here that you don't know, and again, that might be a great question to ask. So you can go ahead on the seesaw activity to the Padlet and share something that you wondered. And if you noticed something that you wanted to share, feel free to include that. And you may share what you wondered about either story, or if you had 2 questions, one about each story, feel free to do that as well. And then our next lesson, we'll go over the questions like we normally do and talk about kind of the next step. And just to review, like I said, we'll spend some time talking about this more, but a fable is a type of story that is usually about an animal or animals and kind of something that happens to them. But the purpose of, or the point of the fable is to help teach the reader a lesson. So as I mentioned before, we will definitely spend more time talking about that. But I can't wait to hear what you noticed and wondered about either of these stories or both of these stories. And keep up the great work, and we'll talk more about this soon. All right, thank you. See you guys.